Share a little bit about the story behind your brand. What caused your brand to get started? What was the vision behind it?
Yeah. So about 14 years ago, I was in a situation where I really loved business, but I wanted to use business as a force for good. And at the same time, I started to see a lot of trends around, particularly young consumers, millennials, wanting to purchase things that had some good intention behind them, that they were going to make a difference in the world. It wasn't just, oh, I just want that and I want to enjoy the product. No, I want to enjoy a product and I want a brand that stands for something bigger than the product. So I saw that, and that was, I thought that was going to become a bigger deal, which here we are today. It's a very big deal. And so I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool to develop a business that went after one of the biggest human needs on the planet, the biggest atrocities, which is human trafficking? Is there a way to tie human trafficking solutions to consumer behavior? And that's what drove me back then. Yeah.
And so you have a company that builds bags, wallets, leather, or material goods based out of production in India predominantly. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did it start by, what made you choose India?
Yeah, great question. So when I first started traveling, I went to Africa. I was in Kenya and Ethiopia, and there is when the idea really hit me hard because I got to witness firsthand the level of poverty in the world, and how poverty was feeding slavery, human trafficking as a form of slavery. I got back from that kind of fact finding trip, and I was introduced to a gentleman from India. And I told him, that I really wanted to build a business that would help the poorest of the poor, and particularly people that are the most vulnerable. And he said, well, you really need to check out India. And I started doing my research, and eventually I traveled to India, and I saw that actually India is kind of the epicenter of the problem and the opportunity.
Hmm.
India is now the most populated country, more than China, 1.4 billion people. And it's also the fastest growing region for fashion factory or manufacturing. China is actually too expensive.
Hmm.
So South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, those regions, that is where a lot of apparel is being manufactured. It's also the largest impoverished region of the world. There's more poverty in India than any other country. You wouldn't classify it as the poorest country because when you look at the poorest country numbers, it's an average of income and people. So the rich people, skew the poor. So it averages out not to be the most poor country, but it has the actual sheer population of the most poverty. Over 300 million people are in destitute poverty in India, basically the population of the United States. And because of that poverty, slavery is the highest in of any other country. So you have three factors going on. You've got fashion industry growth, you've got the highest poverty, and you got the highest human trafficking, slavery.
And I understand it to be that in India, in America, they say there's the 1%, and there's a divide between, the rich and the poor. But I understand that in India, there's a very big divide between the wealthy and the people that are in poverty. Answer one question for me, just so I'm on the same page as you as we have
Yeah.
this discussion. You were saying that you were looking at solving human trafficking, and slavery's associated with that. When I think of human trafficking, just from my understanding of it, generally I equate that to sex work or sex slavery that comes in from human trafficking females, young girls that way. But is there a type of human trafficking, or is there a means for human trafficking to be focused on like work labor?
Yeah, that is a category. Yeah, sex trafficking is the most prevalent and the uh, most aware. People are the most aware of that.
Hmm.
Um, it's really yeah. There's different kinds. So basically, the way it works is that you're super poor and you can't live you can't make a living in your current
Hmm.
situation. So you're desperate. Desperation leads to believing the lie of a stranger who says, "Hey, I got a better gig for you," and that could be sex work, but it also could be hard labor. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it could be, "Hey, we've got this brick factory in India," and the father finds out about it. He's like, "Hey, I got this opportunity to work in this brick factory, and they actually have housing for us. They're going to care for us. It's really the ultimate." So they go to this factory thinking that dad's going to have a great job. Next thing you know, mom's got to work, children have to work, and he's trapped in a prison and can't get out. If he tries to get out, someone will be hurt really bad. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire. It's
Hmm.
been a while since that movie's been out, but that's a pretty accurate just depiction of what goes on in India. So yeah, it could be any one of those labor. It could be hard labor. It could be sex labor. It could be just child labor, working in a fishery off some coast. That's very common. Where young kids are forced to get on a boat and catch fish for a month or two and can't get off and don't get paid and are treated very poorly.
Okay, and now that you're saying it that way, I can't remember if you sent me a video after our first conversation or I saw this somewhere else, but that exact example of the brick factory, I do remember seeing a video of a family staying in what looked like to be, maybe you could call it a hut at the very best, but essentially it sounded like they had received a loan from whoever owned this brick factory, and then they would get each brick was equal to a certain amount of payback to the loan. But when you did the math, it was next to impossible for them
Right,
to, in any of the kids, the parents, any of their lives, to ever have it paid off
right,
that way.
exactly. That's a pretty typical scenario. And another really popular one that's going on right now with all the migration and people leaving countries is that poor people are trying to flee countries and they can't afford it, right?
Mm.
So the handler, the smuggler, whatever you want to call it, he or she approaches a young girl and says, "Hey, we can get you out of this country into Europe or America, whatever, though it's going to cost a lot of money, maybe $10,000." And of course, that person doesn't have it. And they say, "No problem. We have a job for you. When you get there, you're going to work for us." And and sometimes they're very clear about it. You're going to be a sex worker for us, or you're going to work in a factory, doing something. In any case, we have you. We own you, but we'll get you into that country.
Mm. Okay. Okay. And your goal with Made Free is to build a brand, to build a company that can give people an opportunity in their home country to have a job that can help them support their family, support themselves, and avoid this type of trap or entrapment.
Absolutely. So all the data, all the research points to extreme poverty as the biggest culprit leading to human trafficking and slavery. Okay.
Mm.
So if you slavery is generally a symptom of poverty. So I love going after the root cause and say, okay, so the root cause is poverty. All right, great. Let's look at poverty. Well, then you look at poverty in South Asia, where the most human trafficking slavery is, then you go, okay, well, why is there poverty? Well, people aren't being paid a fair wage. Well, where is that? The fashion industry. So then you drill down on the fashion industry and you go, okay, well, what's the legal wage? Well, let's not even talk about slavery. Let's look at the legal wage of a factory worker in the fashion industry. In South Asia, that averages about $2 a day. That's legal.
Mm.
Um, that's not sweatshop. That's not slavery. That's just above board legal wage.
Mm.
Well, you can't live on $2 a day in South Asia. So what happens is that is what creates this vulnerability. You're working a 12-hour day, horrible work conditions. You can't live on that. And that, of course, takes you down this path we just described. So what we learned is that you actually can pay a livable wage in the fashion industry, and you can eke out a high quality product that's competitively priced. There's really no excuse. Labor is a small percentage of the total cost of making anything in the apparel industry. So
Hmm.
what we're doing is we're paying livable wages, which in many cases are 5 times the legal wage, and we're providing a clean, safe, enjoyable, fun work environment. 8-hour days, time off, healthcare support, savings account support, counseling if needed. You know, lots of breaks, and it's a very healthy environment. And they're not just making a decent amount of money; they're actually thriving as individuals, and they feel hopeful in their life, etc. And we've been doing this for 12 years now, and we see case after case of lives being transformed through this model.
Well, that's amazing to hear. And I know in our previous conversation and at the beginning of this one, we were talking about B2B, B2C. What's your primary driver as a company to be able to get your products out there to people? And it sounded like right now, your primary focus is that B2B side. Just kind of shifting gears a little bit, just kind of talk me through what that looks like to you. Like, what's maybe the split between D2C and B2B, like percentage wise of revenue, and where do you see the most traction when it comes to the market?
Right, right. So for us right now, we're about 75% B2B, 25% consumer. And the reason we're going after that is that it's a growth strategy for us and the biggest opportunity to make an impact faster. Becoming a consumer brand is a slower, arduous process. You have to establish large retail um, brands, stores. The payment terms require a lot more inventory on
Mhm.
hand, and you have to float money longer. So it's a very expensive, slow process. We are bootstrapping this business. We are now relying on outside investors, so we're taking the hard road financially. So because we want to maintain the purity of the vision, and if we get a lot of outside investors, that would be at risk. So because of that, we looked for what sales channels could we make the biggest impact, the fastest at a lower cost of growth. And when we looked at the promotional products industry in the business world, we found that's a great fit. So promotional products industry is, branded swag, logo gear, hats, t-shirts, bags that businesses buy to give to their employees, their clients, conference bags, that type of thing. That's a $25 billion business US. And what's cool about this business for us too is that we're able to not just sell great product and move forward with our movement of ending human trafficking. We also can help corporations improve their recruitment and their retention of their employees and productivity, which sounds crazy, but that is very true, and I can get into that if you want. Um,
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And also, kind of a question on with the D2C side, of course, there's opportunities, and I see them on your website of talking through your ethical and sustainable practices for sourcing products, and you make a direct connection between the purchase and the impact in terms of days of freedom.
right.
It sounds like B2B is your primary. You said 75%. So I'd love to hear a little bit also about just the different, how you go about approaching communicating with your B2B clients and what they care about and what they are focused on when they're doing business with you.
Yeah. So in the business world, there's a couple different things. One, of course, most businesses are very concerned about environmental impact. They want to buy products that have a sustainability factor to them. They want organic, they want recycled materials, they want products that last because they understand landfill is a big problem. Landfill, actually, apparel waste is the second largest contributor to landfill waste. So it's a significant
Mm.
category. So they're very interested in that. But then there's a whole nother piece. There's environmental sustainable goals or ESGs, and governments. I'm sorry, and governance, environmental, sustainable governance, and we affect that. But a big message that we talk about is that, you got to be careful that you don't only focus on the planet and the environment, because
Mhm.
theoretically, or not theoretically, reality, you could have a sweatshop making your product out of sustainable materials.
Hmm.
So you really got to be careful that you have a holistic approach and that you're thinking of the people behind the product. There's livelihoods at stake here. And that's, of course, where our passion is. And so what we do is we take that message to the corporate C-suite. And we say, look, you guys are the best in your business, or you want to be. You have very high ideals and values. You care about people. You care about the planet. We can partner with you on all levels. And we're not only going to meet your sustainability goals, that's awesome, but we're also going to fight human trafficking. And when you take that message to your employees and your clients, they love that. So think of a new hire at a new tech company, and this new hire, it comes on board and they get a backpack with the company's logo on it. And the backpack says, has our message on it, made free, and that this bag actually helps to end human trafficking, and
Hmm.
that the company behind it has achieved, 500 days of freedom, which is what we measure. As you mentioned, we measure the days of freedom that our corporate partners have accomplished so far. So this employee, this new hire is like, wow, I love my new job. I love my company, but now I'm even more impressed because they're actually walking the talk. They said that the environment's important. They said that sustainability is important. They said that people were important. This is evidence in this backpack that I got as a new employee. And it's a high quality bag. It's got a lifetime guarantee. It has all the features that someone would want. And it gives a very holistic message to the new hire. Well, and data shows that 88% of millennials are looking for tangible proof that their employer cares about people and the environment. And if it doesn't, they're going to walk. So now we're affecting recruitment and retention.
I love that. And when it comes to cost on the B2B side, you're paying more for labor than, let's say, someone that's not focused on ethical practices. I'll just put it as bluntly as possible.
Yeah.
Are you cutting margins, or are you able to be competitive with pricing to your B2B partners, or is there a extra charge for the products that you provide comparative to your competitors?
Yeah, that is a common question and suspicion. And here's the reality. That was the first thing that I looked at when I was looking at this business model. The first thing I did was I looked at the financials of this. Could this work? Could you pay
Mhm.
someone the wages we wanted to pay and build a product that was competitive in the marketplace? And the answer was yes.
Hmm.
Our products are on par on price and quality with any major brand. We don't cost more. Um, and then the question, but we pay people a lot more. So the question is, well, how do you do that? Well, the reality is there's a lot of margin and a lot of fat and inefficiencies in this industry.
Hmm.
There's too many players. There's too many inefficiencies in the supply chain, and the profits that these companies make are I think beyond what they should make. So we make a reasonable profit so we can sustain our business and grow it, and we pay our people really well, and we have a very efficient supply chain.
That's good. I asked because you said there's a question you hear often. I imagine during the communication or sales process with B2B. I was talking with a sustainability brand yesterday, and they are doing B2B. And that's one thing they mentioned is that they have the mission, but there's also the need to communicate to the CFO or whoever it may be that there is going to be a financial positive impact or just equal comparison to be able to make that shift over to their product versus their competitors as well.
Yeah, well, that's the way a lot of people look at it. I, uh, I love finding more efficient ways to do things, and I come from a manufacturing background of best practice and more effective manufacturing techniques. And so what we do is we work with our teams and we help them have a lean manufacturing process.
Hmm.
There's just a lot of waste in manufacturing, and there's a lot of inefficiency. So it's all good news. We don't have to sacrifice humans anymore. We can be competitive.
I love that. And as you're looking at this year, we're in Q2 right now of 2024. So we still have, even though it feels like it's flying by, still have quite a bit
Yep.
of time left this year. What are some of your biggest marketing opportunities or challenges that you're facing?
Yeah. So right now, businesses are going through a lot of uncertainty about the economy, about
Hmm.
employment, a lot of things. So they're cutting back on promotional products.
Hmm.
At the same time, though, they want to be more purposeful about what they do buy, and they need to engage their employees in creative ways. So we see our position as a very unique place to be. We have kind of what we think the industry is asking for. So really, it's just a matter of communication and getting the word out and connecting with people. So what we've done over the last 2 years is we've built a large distributor partnership with the major distributors who sell directly to large corporations. So in the swag world, if you're a Google or if you're IBM or Dell or whoever, you don't buy your backpacks and tote bags from the manufacturer. You don't buy them from the brand. You wouldn't go right to Made Free and say, "Hey, I need, 5,000 backpacks for my employees." You would go to a distributor where you buy all things swag. So there's these master distributors, and that's kind of typical in the supply chain of every category in big business. They like to reduce their number of suppliers. They aggregate them to these big master suppliers. So it's the same thing in this space. So what we've done over the last 2 years is we've developed these partnerships with these large distributors, and we're training them up with the message, the good news that we're talking about here. And they're going to these big corporations and saying, "Hey, we found a unique, opportunity for you in this category, and we're getting a lot of interest." So we're very excited. That we see the next 6 months as an explosion for us, as people are thinking about the end of the year, employee gifts, and conferences are happening now, and conferences are being planned for next year. We're we're in a really great opportunity space, and we're really excited about it because for us, it's not revenue that we're excited about; it's what revenue means. So revenue means more life-changing jobs for our makers. So we have a different measure of success. Our goal is to transform the lives of 1 million people in South Asia.
Hmm.
That is 250,000 jobs because each person can provide for three others. So if we want to help 1 million people, we got to provide life-changing, well-paying, livable wage jobs for 250,000. That's our BHAG. That's our big goal that we're going for. We're sharing the opportunity with big corporations, and they're responding. They're very excited because I tell you, frankly, your generation doesn't want another cheap T-shirt or hat or pen that breaks. They said, "You know what? Keep it. I want
Hmm.
quality and I want meaning behind something if I'm going to be receiving any kind of logo gear." And so we're that brand.
Yeah, that is definitely what my generation and also the younger generations are focusing on is impact with purchase that way. And I'm sure that will continue to multiply as money moves from baby boomer generation down as
Yeah.
well. And it makes sense when you were talking about the B2B side. I'm familiar. I've actually had someone on my podcast that works at one of the distributors, so a client type of yours, and he was explaining it as they have a system that they set up. So when they work with a corporation, that corporation's employees basically have like a budget, if you will. They're allowed, and they go into the portal and pick the swag that they want, and then
Yep.
order it or customize it that way.
Yep, that's how it works. Yeah.
So, well, this
Yeah.
this sounds like an exciting, like you said, 6 months ahead, year ahead for you that way of growth. If you had to summarize what you do, I normally say everything we've discussed today, but if you had to summarize what you do or your focus into a marketing mindset, what mindset should listeners have?
We have the opportunity to transform the lives of people that are in destitute poverty and very vulnerable just by changing um, how we act as consumers.
I love that. And for anyone listening that's at the stage of figuring out what they'd like to do in the marketing industry, because this is a marketing podcast, what role or roles do you think will have the highest demand opportunity in the next 3 to 5 years?
Hmm. I think providing a genuine message and a vision, a big why, needs to be part of marketing. More purposeful, deeper, more intentional communication and messaging, less hype, less cheap thrills. Just really find meaningful change and communicating that in your message and engaging people around that.
Super important. How do you, side question for you, how do you feel about AI with copywriting and creative and all of that? Do you feel like it adds a
Yeah.
lot of noise? Do you feel like it adds opportunity?
Wow. I don't know. I think we got to be careful. I
Mm,
really do. I think we. I just saw a post or a message on web development for online marketplace stores. It's like, hey, let AI determine how you want to describe your products and your mission and your business. I'm like, really? I
hmm.
mean, that's personal. You know?
Yeah, I won't get on.
That's personal. I don't want some, non-human to decide that for me. So I think we have to be cautious. I know there's some opportunities and improved efficiency around things that are repetitive tasks. I
Mhm.
get that. We don't, there's a lot of things that humans are doing that are just repetitive tasks. And yeah, that I can see the value there. But to say that we're going to replace, the intelligence of a human, eh, let's be careful.
Yeah, I won't get on too long of a rant, but so I'm a fan of AI, but I feel that we over assume how smart it is because it's really not that smart right now. It doesn't necessarily think it is working based off of percentages and odds of predicting the next best
Right.
character or letter or whatever it may be. So a lot of times it can be used improperly. If treat AI like you treat a team member, right? You wouldn't onboard a new team member and then just expect them to already know your brand and your customers and how to speak about your brand. You have to train them, you have to onboard them. You have to do the same thing with AI, right? You have to give it the information so it can properly predict what it should be doing that way. So I think that's where, like you're saying, it telling you how to describe your products and stuff without a big data set of information of previous descriptions and previous, brand mission, it's going to be hard for it to do it properly for you going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and last question for you: tell us, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about your business?
Well, our website is madefree.co. And make sure you get that co .co. So please go there, but then follow us on Instagram. Same thing, madefree.co, and LinkedIn as well, madefree.co. And so we'd love to bring you into the community.
Well, Brad, this was a great episode. Appreciate you coming on and talking to us today.
Yeah, thank you. Good to talk, Colby.